Hello, how are you? Hope you're okay. Now, first of all, I'd love to thank you for sending me a lot of messages, a lot of comments about the coffees. It was a lot of fun talking to you and sort of troubleshooting some of the recipes. Obviously, the recipes that we provide here, they're not gonna exactly possibly work in your place due to different water, different machine, different grinders. But this is why I really appreciate that you have been getting in touch with me, and together we have been finding the ways and solutions and going through the matrix so you can get best out of your first release, best out of your second release. Also, thank you for comments. Feel free to be in touch with me. I actually would love to hear from you. Feels like that we've created this great friendship with the first and second release, so I don't want this to be goodbye. I'd love to hear from you about your coffees and what you have experienced so far. Anyway, our final release, the very first coffee today, it's going to be Kenya. Now, when we think of Kenyan coffees, a lot of us straight away think, wow, I love Kenyans, they're exciting, you know, blackcurrant flavors, they're super juicy, they have a great body, they have a lot of complexities. But maybe when we think of the negatives of Kenyan coffee, what does cross our mind? Possibly, for espresso especially, possibly really high acidity and maybe too much grapefruit on the aftertaste, and sort of maybe coffees are not as balanced because they're so vibrant and they have so much of this beautiful acid. So I want to tell you a quick story. About a year and a half ago, actually 2 years ago, Angus Mackey, one of our baristas, wanted to compete for another year, and he said, Sash, I want to challenge myself. I want to use Kenyan. And I said, wow, you're crazy. Kenyan in the barista competition, that's going to be hard to dial in, because I'd love you to do carbonic maceration process. Because that way we can find all of these crazy acids and beautiful sort of flavors, but hopefully with the carbonic maceration we can bring that sweetness down and we can bring these caramels down and make sure we can balance the coffee somehow. It didn't need long to convince me. Within 3 weeks I was actually flying to Kenya and doing this process in Thageini washing station. Now, when we went to Thageini station, I've realized that they have two varietals on their farms, on their fields, SL28 and Ruiro. Now, SL28, when we capped that by itself, it had a lot of blackcurrants, a lot of lime, and a lot of these beautiful, juicy, vibrant notes. SL28, it's normally a little bit lower yielding than Ruiro varietal. Now, Ruiro varietal, it's a very high yielding coffee, about double the amount of SL28. And they mature a little bit faster. Therefore, this complexity of this coffee does not go to this level where we're having a lot of these blackcurrant characters. Ruiro is normally creamy, chocolatey, round, and in my opinion works very well with SL28 in order to give you this perfect balanced espresso. So what we've done with the carbonic maceration, we've intentionally wanted to do the process in order to bring as much sweetness as we possibly can. And also make this lime note to be more like a sorbet lime rather than just like a lime that possibly will not be balanced as an espresso. So the first step, we've taken the cherries, we pulped them, and we placed them in a stainless containers. Now, the reason we pulped them and we placed them in a container, we wanted to do shorter fermentation. And for these 3 days of fermentation, we were concentrating getting these blackcurrants and lime to be exposed and to be sort of highlighted as much as possibly. We were targeting certain microorganisms in order to give us these final compounds of these blackcurrants that will be a lot more sweeter than they normally would, and the lime that will be almost like sorbet-like. Now, second step, we wanted to get as much of these chocolatey notes and characters that we normally get in Ruiro. So after 3 days, we've taken this container, we placed the cherries more like a concrete pools, and we've done dry fermentation. So normally in a Kenya, coffee is fermented with the water, but we wanted to do dry fermentation because with the dry fermentation we managed to target the certain compounds in there that will give us perception of coffee being really sweet, really chocolatey, and almost caramel-like. So 2 steps. Step 1 was to highlight the SL28 with the carbonic maceration process being pulped, and step 2 was to highlight the Ruiro sweet components in the concrete tanks with the dry fermentation. Now, the way we're going to approach this matrix today, it's going to be very interesting. We're going to be targeting both of these amazing compounds and amazing flavors in one cup. This matrix is going to probably be most challenging, but you're ready for it. Let's do it. So this matrix is going to be a little bit different than before. We're gonna be including the timer for every single coffee that we do. Now, we've done a lot of work, or Angus Mackey has done a lot of work with this coffee. And he found this beautiful pattern. When we're tasting these coffees at two different temperatures, different things speak up to us. At, for example, 37 degrees, SL28 is going to speak up with these beautiful fruity notes. But then at 35 degrees or 34 degrees, Ruiro is going to really balance this cup with so much more sweetness, caramels, etc. It's going to be a very interesting exercise. If you don't have a temperature gauge, it's okay. Feel free to use the timer. So every time when you finish the extraction, press the timer on, and after 2 minutes, have a first sip. And then wait for coffee to sit down for another minute. So at 3 minutes, have another sip. You will see how your shots will change. Some shots at the beginning might taste great at 2 minutes, but at 3 minutes acidity might jump up and coffee might not be balanced. So when we're looking for that perfect balance of SL28 and Ruiro, we want to make sure that we taste it at 2 minutes and we also taste it at 3 minutes. Let's make coffees now. Final two recipes. So we've landed with 19.5 in, 39 out, 30 seconds. And we found this coffee was way over extracted. Body was very heavy, rough, aftertaste was really dry, a lot of zesty notes, a lot of peel characters, nibby, toffee. So coffee tasted like it was burnt. First sip was heavy, but then the second sip was really heavy and possibly unpalatable, if I can say. Now, a lot better results at 19.5 in, 39 out and 26 seconds. This was the perfect cup. Why it was perfect? Well, everything worked really good. So in the first sip, we got exactly what we wanted to get. That beautiful vibrancy and juiciness. Taste balance, medium plus, sweetness, and sweetness was very brown sugar-like. Kind of almost like a cherry sort of characters in the sweetness, and this honey, so it was like triple layered sweetness, was beautiful. Acidity was still higher intensity, kind of medium to high, was very vibrant, but imagine eating a lime sorbet or even like lime ice cream. So even though it was a bright acidity, it was very well balanced and was very well integrated with the sweetness. And bitterness, you know, I love bitterness, and this amount of bitterness was just medium. I had that beautiful, ripe, ruby grapefruit bitterness. Now, when it comes to weight, it's exactly what we wanted to get. Ruiro spoke up so nicely, especially in the second sip. Weight is medium, texture is medium texture, very caramelized-like, kind of bit of malts, bit of caramel, bit of honey, and the finish was, imagine having a caramel and honey mixed with a grapefruit. It was long and sweet and beautiful. Now, what we've done with this coffee, we've let this coffee to sit for about 3 minutes using a room temperature cup. First sip at 3 minutes, and SL28 was just amazing. It was juicy, blackcurrants, cherries, limes. It was phenomenal cup. But then we had a second sip at 4 minutes. And the 4 minutes is where Ruiro was just gorgeous. Caramels, honey, malt, and a bit of that ruby grapefruit on the finish. I think this coffee really represented the varietals. What we've done with the process, we've actually pushed to elevate this process even further with SL28 and Ruiro. And finally with the matrix, with this recipe, we could actually taste the potential of the farm and of everything. So I'm very pleased with this cup. I really hope you have similar expressions like we do. You might not have this exactly the same recipe because of your machines or grinder, but what's really important when we're dialing in a matrix, you need to know what your destination is. You need to know exactly where you want to head. And please, every time when you're dialing these coffees, make sure that you want to have that perfect balance of SL28 and Ruiro. And if you don't quite find it, I'm here. Reach out to me again as you did in the past, and looking forward hearing from you, and looking forward having you with the next session, which is going to be amazing. Thank you very much.